The One Piece world's greatest weapon was constructed in Water 7, its location was hidden in Alabasta, and now it waits slumbering beneath Wano, preserved by Joy Boy for the final war against Imu. I'm on a mission to uncover the secrets of the Great Kingdom and the allies of Joy Boy during the Void Century as they hid his symbol in their own flags. They hid the true history within the poneglyphs, and they've quietly been preparing the world for the next coming of Nika. And today I want to start with the countries that conspired to build and hide Pluton so that it could be used in the final war against Imu, Alabasta, Water 7, and Wano. But these nations have a lot more to hide than just a giant battleship that can destroy the entire planet. I think that these countries themselves were meant to survive the cataclysms that ended the first and second One Piece world, and to ensure that the new dawn would finally come in the form of Luffy. You might not know this, but Alubarna is the oldest known city in the One Piece world. At over 4,000 years old, this ancient desert palace is nearly as old as Ohara's Tree of Knowledge, the actual oldest thing in the story. But with all the crazy new revelations we've been getting about the One Piece timeline in recent arcs, I've kind of got to ask the question, does that mean that Alubarna is even older than the first world? Like, has Alabasta specifically survived not just one, but 2 apocalypses? Let's be real, not even the X-Men could handle that many apocalypses. Apocalypse? What's the plural? And with the One Piece world going through apocalypsi like they're in style at the moment, this ain't Alabasta's first rodeo, I think. Alubarna specifically is very weird and has been built to last. Duralast. And throughout the centuries recently, I think that it's been sharing its end of the world avoiding knowledge with the rest of its own allies, helping preserve the worshippers of the sun god Nika long into the future. And of course, Alabasta, the sun god Ra, all these things, you know that they're gonna be connected. And to be fair, right now in the story, it's not going super well after Imu managed to erase the world's history already once, but one of Alabasta's monarchs, the legend herself, Nefertari di Lily, preserved a poneglyph there and spread the other poneglyphs throughout the world anyways to record the location of Pluton hidden within the catacombs of the kings so that it could be used in the future, hopefully against Imu. But you might rightfully be asking, what about that first world? And when Crocodile is demanding info on Pluton, Robin misdirects him by lying about its contents, just listing a bunch of historical facts about the country of Alabasta. But Robin's own historical knowledge, of course, doesn't lie. Knowing all the history is kind of her entire thing, right? She's the most literate person in One Piece, hands down, I think is a fair statement to do. Vegapunk, maybe, but you know, you get it, very close. But she kind of tells us plenty of hints in the scene from Alabasta's ancient history that are so old they actually used a different calendar altogether than the rest of the One Piece world uses today. And if Alabasta is that old, it's very possible, I think, that the country already existed during the first One Piece world, before Joy Boy, before even Devil Fruits. I mean, if it was 800 years exactly between the second world and the third world, I'd say that Alabasta for sure existed in the first world, maybe even further back throughout multiple cycles of destruction and rebirth, because there must have been something before the first One Piece world too, right? So the country didn't just last through the Void Century and, you know, the entire giant war and the flooding of the world, but throughout the days of Nika and the Hellflame Serpent. In other words, it's old. It's even older than I feel right now. Oh boy, it's happening this year. I'm not ready to turn 30. Let's not think about it. Anyways, Alabasta, right? With all of its history, it still bears the scars of that millennia-old conflict. After all, we all know how the second world ended, flooding, but how about the first one? That one ended in flames. The world was covered in darkness and ash, and Alabasta is a scorched, arid landscape. Ancient ruins litter its desert, buried by centuries of sand and dryness, but it wasn't always like this. Remember, when the Straw Hats arrived on Alabasta, it was suffering from a long drought caused by Crocodile and his use of the, by the way, very weird and mysterious dance powder. I think I mentioned this in another video recently, but rereading Alabasta, the entire dance powder thing and how it takes away humidity from one place but then floods another, very weird. I kind of wonder if it's going to be relevant again. But that's not the point. The point is that cities like Irumalu here were once known as green oases filled with plant life and plentiful water. But what if thousands of years ago in the One Piece world, the entire country of Alabasta, which was way bigger since it wasn't flooded yet, was just fundamentally different? What if the entirety of the country was once green? That would actually have precedent in our real life, because in case you didn't know, the real Sahara Desert, which of course houses the real-life Egypt that Alabasta is based on, also used to be very much green and lush millennia ago, and they've been finding these old buried cities recently and like old dried out riverbeds that probably existed a couple thousand of years ago. Now, Crocodile's plan, of course, was just a tiny taste of the massive climate change that's been affecting the One Piece globe for literal centuries, a world changed first by fire, and then by a massive worldwide flood during the Second World. In fact, I believe that Alabasta actually includes tons of major hints for the entire endgame of the series, because it was the first major saga after the East Blue, and a lot of it was probably outlined back when Oda was still working from his original 5-year timeline for completing One Piece to begin with, which, yeah, is a thing. If you didn't know, originally the plan was to actually, have One Piece be finished in 5 years, which, Oda overshot slightly. Just a chill 25 years so far, and I hope it's gonna be 40 or 50. The longer, the merrier. But yeah, while Alabasta was going on, Oda was probably feeling like he needed to wrap up the story soon. That's probably why Vivi and Cobra have come back in major ways recently, and why Nefertari di Lily has been revealed as a super important character during the Void Century specifically. So early themes of things like erased history, changing the climate, the pattern established by Crocodile of trying to dethrone rightful rulers by making himself look like a hero, I kind of think it's all laying down some major clues for how One Piece is gonna end and the final saga altogether, and maybe even give us more hints to what the One Piece world looked like during the First World as well. So let's take a look now in detail, right? The way that the city of Alubarna itself has been preserved, an elevated platform city with architecture dug down into the bedrock itself, could have helped the residents during the First World to survive the fires that might have raged across the planet. The underground structures, like the Tomb of the Kings, could have helped people survive the clash between Nika and the Hellflame Serpent long enough to rebuild on the surface afterwards. Again, something that kind of has some precedent in the real world, where there are these giant shelter caves in a lot of countries like Derinkuyu in Turkey, and like a lot of other places where there were like entire underground cities for people to take shelter from natural disasters and war. And after surviving the end of the world once, Alubarna then made sure it was ready for the next cycle and helped the rest of the world prepare for the end of the Second World. Thousands of years later, Alabasta would most likely become part of the Great Kingdom, often called the Ancient Kingdom, which is, a mistranslation. It's more accurately translated as Great, the Great Kingdom. This country was most likely made up of several places we know that existed along the Grand Line. And honestly, I'm pretty sure that back before the world flooded at the end of the Second World, that they probably shared an entire continent too, that now just turned into islands, and the major places here worshipped the sun god Nika, their flags still bearing the secret symbol of the sun to this day, the one I'm talking about. This great kingdom was spanning the entire globe and was most likely ruled by the pirate king, Joy Boy. Because let's be real, Alabasta has all the signs of a major Joy Boy ally, Cobra hiding a poneglyph, and he doesn't know why, but he knows he's supposed to keep it a secret from everyone, including the government, and has been passed down through generations of kings. He even knows that the poneglyph's message has something to do with Pluton's hiding spot, and Alabasta's rulers have the D initial, connecting them even more closely to Joy Boy and the Void Century. And of course, their flag is the first country that has the symbol of the sun in it, Joy Boy's symbol specifically, a big circle surrounded by 8 smaller circles, except that in Alabasta's case, they're actually spinning around and going whee right? You get it. It's a sun. It's a sun. It's a desert kingdom. But at the same time, we also know that Alabasta and their ruler, Nefertari di Lili, was one of the founding members of the world government who were opposed to Joy Boy to begin with as well. Like, Vivi switched sides at some point or was kind of playing both sides, seeing which one she liked more. At one point, she was on Imu's side, the evil dude who dethroned Joy Boy and took over the entire world. But if that's the case, then why does Alabasta have all these clear signifiers of being a Joy Boy ally? Well, we do know that Lily eventually betrayed Imu, spreading the poneglyphs around the globe, but she never made it back to Alabasta to begin with. It wasn't like she pulled back up and was like, nah, we're on JB's side now. No. What's the actual timeline on this, right? Did they somehow become an ally to Joy Boy separately from Lily, or were they always an ally and Lily was like a super double agent spy thing? I gotta say, I actually kind of like that one, because looking at all of the facts here, it does seem like she might have only joined Imu with the intention to betray the world government pretty much from the beginning, since their flag and everything else is just perfectly aligned with Joy Boy, even though she could never have personally made that alliance after the fact. Or, in going with another one of my personal agendas lately, that God Valley basically spoiled a bunch of the Void Century to us, and Lily might have just been kidnapped by an absolutely obsessed Imu, you know, Shaki style. But then once she actually managed to break free, she might have then been able to spread the poneglyphs around the world, preserving hope for a new dawn in the future. Now I gotta say, I'm not exactly sure how the poneglyphs destinations were actually picked, but she did place a pretty crucial one in Alabasta, the one that gives the true location of Pluton. But I'm also pretty sure that the people of Alabasta didn't just play a role in hiding Pluton. I actually think it was more than that, and they actually helped build the thing. And I do think that because, well, I mean, just look at Alubarna and look at Water 7. And yes, I know, Oda likes his elevated circular cities with big staircases. He does the same thing in the Flower Capital, though really, if anything, I think that's just more of an argument for what I'm getting at here, because in a lot of cases, all of these are Joy Boy affiliated countries having that same layout structure. And I think the obvious answer here is that most of these elevated cities are built like that to avoid the global flooding a second time, a measure that they took to survive the end of the Void Century War maybe, or a measure they might have taken to survive the end of the Void Century War or even earlier wars, again during the First World. But let's also not kid around here. Alubarna and Water 7 are way more similar than any of the other islands and cities are, like, in general. Like, you do have the elevation, but on Alubarna you have exactly 8 staircases surrounding them, which means that a top view of Alubarna and its 8 gates basically are themselves shaped like a massive Joy Boy symbol. But with Water 7, you actually get the same thing, but there is 1 giant staircase and 7 docks for a total of 8. It's the same shape as Alubarna, but they've just had to keep building on top of the existing city since it's been slowly sinking below the ocean for 800 years now. Now I'm just gonna assume I'm not the first person to have this thought ever in history, because it kind of feels obvious, but it still blew my mind because it does seriously look like you could just stack Water 7 right on top of Alubarna and it makes perfect sense. And that would make sense if people from Alabasta helped build Water 7 to begin with. One big running theory I have right now, and I'm still probing a little bit, is that the 8 circles in Joy Boy symbol might represent 8 nations or 8 kings that allied with Joy Boy, or 8 locations that made up the entire Great Kingdom. In fact, that might just be why so many of the One Piece cities are perfectly circular. They could literally just be the 8 circles of Joy Boy's flag. And since Water 7 doesn't really have a flag of its own or any poneglyphs or anything like that, I'm pretty sure it doesn't count as one of the 8 allies. Instead, I think it was built by the 8 allies in secret, maybe during or right before the big war. And as we talked about earlier, Alabasta might have been in the apocalypse surviving business going way back, and if Alubarna is a city built to survive the end of the First World, then Water 7 is the perfect city to survive the Second World, continually building upwards to avoid the rising sea level of a giant flood. But Water 7, of course, wasn't just built to survive a flood, it was built for a very specific purpose: the construction of an ancient weapon, Pluton. The perfect ship shipbuilding island. The entire island is one giant dock. I do wonder if Joy Boy's allies needed a place where they could construct the world's ultimate battleship in secret, and if Lily was working with the world government, they certainly couldn't start constructing in Alabasta, but people in Alabasta probably helped create Water 7, which again explains the pretty much identical architecture. Meanwhile, they also brought some other allies together: Samurai from Wano, where Pluton is now, Fishmen from Fishman Island, think of Tom and who has been passing down the blueprints of, Pluton, and most importantly, of course, the giants of the Hammer Clan, the Galela, the world's greatest shipwrights who ended up constructing Pluton. And as you know, this group of shipwrights are the talk of the town right about now, since we do know that my real dad, Roxty Zebek, was looking all over for them and felt like he needed them to take down Emu, and with the connections to Pluton and Water 7, it's not exactly a huge stretch, I think, of the imagination to notice how similar Galela is to Galela, the renowned shipwright company that operates out of Water 7, which is why I was really surprised when rereading the Water 7 arc recently specifically, because you know who named the Galela company? Because you see, I personally actually misremembered it and just kind of thought that the Galela had been operating all these hundreds of years as the single most famous shipwright company on this island, but no, Iceberg was the one who named his company after Tom's death, because at that point Tom's workers was no more, because no more Tom, he pretty dead, but Iceberg brought the 7 rival shipwright companies of Water 7 together under one umbrella, the now newly formed Galela Company, which the text is kind of unclear on whether it was 7 shipwright companies plus the remnants of Tom's workers, which would make 8 in total, which I would personally love, of course, since I'm on a, bit of a binge of noticing every 8 in the entire series to see how everything is just starting to trace back to Joy Boy. But honestly, 8 or not 8, what really matters here is how Iceberg got to the name Galela. And the most obvious answer, of course, is that he must have heard it from his own mentor, Tom, the same way that Tom also passed down the blueprints for Pluton in the end to Frankie, not to Iceberg. But last time that I checked, Tom isn't a giant from Elbaf, so why did he, out of all people, end up with these things passed down from the Galela? Because the original Galela were the ones who made the plants, right? So I kind of imagine that before they ended up back in Water 7, Tom probably inherited them back in his own home of Fishman Island. Also, going back and rereading Fishman Island in Japanese recently, I thought it was hilarious to notice that the Sea Kings talking to Shirahoshi after she awakens her Poseidon abilities are just heavily implying that the Galela tribe, they literally use the same word as, Oda then later uses to describe the Galela, also help build the Noah, and that they might be necessary to repair the damage that Luffy did to it while fighting Hody Jones. Basically, what they say in Japanese is, without this tribe or this group of workers, we can't fix the Noah. And in that case, the blueprints must have been passed down to some capable shipwrights there on Fishman Island, who eventually then passed it down through the years to Tom. Now, I personally don't think it's a coincidence that Tom's brother Den just hangs around some ancient poneglyphs all day, where also one of the road poneglyphs used to be, while just coding ships in the sea forest. I think that Tom is way more important to the story than we might have actually thought, honestly. I mean, by the way, just take a look at the tattoos on his arms. Remind you of something, and I'm kind of starting to just see that Joy Boy symbol literally everywhere. Yeah, 100%. When I close my eyes, that symbol is just there, in my dreams and in my nightmares. But you kind of gotta admit, it sure does look like Tom's tattoo is 8 circles around a big circle in the middle, and if I can get real theory brain for a second here, I'd even bet that Tom might have moved over to Water 7 specifically because he thought the time might now be coming close to when Pluton's plans would have to actually get put to use. And he really only missed that promised time by 1 generation because he personally, of course, built Gold D. Rogers' ship. He probably even inherited a lot of shipbuilding techniques from the Galela specifically. I mean, I'm sure that nobody knew how to build with Adam Wood better than shipwrights who were based on Elbaf. where we have the giant atom tree. So to me at least, it makes perfect sense that Tom and Frankie would want to build their greatest ships out of the same material, even though they themselves are not from Elbaf and actually have never been to Elbaf, but still want to get their hands on this legendary wood. Now, of course, as you know, Alabasta and Water 7 aren't the only countries involved with Pluton, because while Water 7 constructed the ship, it was actually in Wano where the ship got preserved for the future. Or I guess, as Sukiyaki would say, Wano is sleeping under the country, whatever that implies. Is Pluton alive? I would not be surprised. Whale peace is a thing, right? Now, Wano is one of the clearest examples of a country that was obviously allied with Joy Boy during the Void Century, because between Toki traveling into the future from that time period, Momo's connection to Zunisha, a road poneglyph being hidden there, and the Joy Boy symbol literally being part of the Kozuki crest, they're barely even hiding it at this point, right? But one thing that they did hide very well was indeed Pluton. Turns out that Pluton is so well hidden that Kaido, even after 20 years of ruling it, never figured out it was there, even after his decade-long occupation of the country, and despite Jack finding the submerged poneglyph. Now, as far as we can tell, with the ending of Wano and everything that's going on there, it does seem like the only real way to unleash Pluton into the world is to finally open Wano's borders, which, kind of raises questions about what exactly that even means. Does Mr. Zunisha here have to tear down that wall? Or why did Momo suddenly decide, based on the logbook that he got from his father, that they actually have to wait a little bit longer instead of fulfilling his father's dream right then and there when he had the opportunity? And Zunisha walked all the way to Wano, and then, bro was like, we don't need you right now, come back later, please. And, kind of like a poor Amazon delivery driver. Sorry, Zunisha. Now, in Vegapunk's message to the world, he calls out Joy Boy very hard for even allowing the ancient weapons to be preserved for future use. After the Great Kingdom's loss against the world government, they had to place failsafes around the world so that eventually the next Joy Boy or next coming of Nika would be able to actually have a chance and claim victory over Imu. And I think we can all agree that probably few of these failsafes are more important than the battleship Pluton built in Water 7, hidden in Wano, and which location was hidden in Alabasta. I mean, it kind of makes sense that they choose Wano for Pluton's hiding place, I think, in retrospect, because as Imu began flooding the world, and most of the Great Kingdom and the world in general was flooded, other than the really highest points that were mountains that then turned into islands, it did mean that Wano was the best prepared spot because it's already so elevated. In fact, in retrospect, it almost feels obvious that Wano was probably intentionally built for that purpose specifically. Like, the high walls and the way that the islands are arranged don't seem natural whatsoever. It's like it was raised up to intentionally protect it from additional flooding while sacrificing pretty much all of old Wano in the process. And the islands themselves even seem somewhat artificially placed too. I mean, the 6 islands that make up Wano are from different climates. There's a funny typo in my script, by the way. It says they are from different clients, which is not what I meant. From climates. Though, who knows, maybe the massive ancient giant skull that became Onigashima, and might have been the continent polar ores that the smaller ores was then named after, maybe he purchased these islands from his clients or for his clients and pulled them together that way as a great vacation resort thing during the Void Century. We might just have called it by accident. Now, the overall timeline is a little bit more fuzzy on this part, since that would have had to been closer to the first world, probably, but I also think it's possible that that's exactly just how Wano was formed. And this next one, I have to admit, is a little bit of a stretch, but if you look at the way that the islands of Wano form a ring around the central island with Mount Fuji on it, which by itself is weird and special and produces the pyrobloim stuff that makes the sky clouds, and also sea prism stone and stuff like that, it almost looks like that ancient giant could have been pulling them into the shape of another Joy Boy symbol, but then kind of died before he was able to finish the project for his clients. Or perhaps at the early point in history here, there just weren't as many nations comprising the Great Kingdom and they just joined later on. Again, this one, I will admit, is kind of out there and a little bit tinfoil, but I think you know what I mean and why I kind of noticed it, because that symbol is freaking everywhere. But yeah, Wano might have been on that Great Kingdom juice from the very beginning. In fact, maybe the ancient kingdom's name was just Wano. But something I'm way more sure about is that I don't think Wano was just meant to preserve Pluton. I think it was meant to preserve the Galela themselves. As you know, one of Wano's islands or regions, Ringo, where Zoro's family's from, is covered in ice and snow and is literally described as the eternal grave because it's so cold there that bodies don't compose. Now, in some other theories, I've already talked about how I'm pretty sure that Moria got the body of Ors from here and that Ringo was that land of ice where Ors died. I've also even speculated that Ors might have been himself a member of the Galela, but whether he was or not, what I'm more sure about now than ever is that the Galela might have intentionally frozen themselves in Ringo, specifically so that they could be woken up later on. Or maybe just someone froze them instead and was like, gonna save you for later in the freezer. I mean, if they were frozen and ready to thaw, then they could get back into action when the promised time comes 800 years later, aka right now in the story, ready to make any additional repairs to Pluton or, which very clearly needs it, the Noah, or to build even more ships for the next Joy Boys Grand Fleet. And you could join my Grand Fleet over on the Ohara Patreon. Don't want to wait till Sunday to hear my thoughts on the weekly chapter? Come on over and get my early thoughts and reactions along with a little sneak preview of what I'll be covering in some videos of this week, alongside a ton of other cool, perks we have there, including a free weekly newsletter if you just want to know what's up in the One Piece world on a weekly basis. Anyhow, before the Galela could be thawed for Luffy, something clearly went wrong. Someone found the frozen Galela, and it wasn't Moria. It probably was the world government or Kaido, which is why it now appears that the Galela are frozen and kept on Punk Hazard. And it very much seems like Blackbeard might get his hands on them since his Titanic captain Kuzan has spent a lot of time on Punk Hazard, specifically in the frozen part, and has a pretty convenient devil fruit, you might know, for thawing them out. It might even be the case that Ors was only left behind because he was just too big to transport along with, the many much smaller giants and ancient giants that made up the rest of the Galela that were on Punk Hazard and, served as research to create the numbers that then Kaido bought from Caesar Clown and stuff like that. But yeah, Alabasta, Water 7, Wano, they've all been way more connected than we all ever thought, I think. All of them were Joy Boys allies in the Great Kingdom, I think is fair to say also, and they all played a role in preserving the hope for a new dawn in the future and the ancient weapon Pluton. And hey, maybe you noticed some connection between these countries that I completely missed, and please let me know in the comments. I'm very excited if you found anything. But also, you might be aware that not all of the structures of the ancient kingdom have remained in the hands of the good guys, or at least from that time period, right? Lots of places that fell were scooped up by Emu, it seems, like, say, the capital of the world government itself, Marijua, because it originally probably belonged to the Lunarians, or to Joy Boy. We know the Lunarians lived on top of the Red Line, and the true purpose for why Imu took it over might go way deeper than just ruling over the world from atop the Red Line. But that's a theory for another video. This one here, to be specific, oh, how convenient. You can watch it right here. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much to all of our fantastic Patreon members, and I will hopefully see you in the next video.